On May 20th, President Lai Ching-te dropped the bombshell of the two-state theory during his inauguration address, instantly igniting tensions in the Taiwan Strait. 3 days later, the CCP, as usual, conducted military exercises around Taiwan, which appeared to be a show of force but was actually a bluff. Insiders reveal that Xi Jinping was actually planning a strategy of encircling but don't attack, create friction, internal subversion, and transfer of defense duties. In other words, the CCP didn't dare to engage in real combat and hoped to achieve its goal through internal subversion. But this tactic seems to have been ineffective. The content of Xi Jinping's secret conversation on January 6 was recently exposed. The head of the United Front Work Department, Shi Taifeng, reported to him that the CCP was conducting a so-called party affairs handover with a Kuomintang, or KMT. It covers everything from provincial to village levels, including sensitive information such as the names of KMT officials, voting records, and personal files. Former President Ma Ying-jeou visited the mainland on April 10. Another prominent KMT figure, Fu Ku-chi, known as the King of Hualien, also visited the mainland on April 26. There was widespread speculation that this trip was also related to the party affairs handover, but it was notable that during the 48 hours of heightened tensions in the Taiwan Strait with PLA exercises around Taiwan, these pro-CCP Taiwanese politicians remained collectively silent. Xi Jinping expressed his displeasure, calling them cowardly money grabbers. It seems that the CCP's meticulous planned party affairs handover was nothing but an empty promise. After President Lai took office, Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense made it clear that if Chinese forces crossed the 21 nautical mile line, Taiwan would retaliate without hesitation. The PLA's ships and aircraft have only dared to hover at a safe distance, not daring to make any rash moves. The Taiwanese military has deployed ships to monitor the PLA warships one-on-one, while in the air, F-16V fighters are directly locking onto PLA J-16 fighters. If a real fight were to break out, those much vaunted PLA jets might end up as mere targets, sinking to the bottom of the sea. Interestingly, despite carrying live ammunition, the PLA didn't actually fire any shots during this exercise. Advanced equipment like destroyers, J-20 stealth fighters, amphibious assault ships, and aircraft carriers were absent. For 3 days, the Chinese Ministry of Defense avoided answering Reuters' calls, fearing that any misstep could cost them their positions under Xi Jinping's scrutiny. In reality, this exercise was primarily aimed at placating domestic hardliners and public sentiment, creating an image of a strong government and a wise leader. However, the video footage released by the government mainly consisted of animated sequences, with only the static parts being real, which lack persuasiveness. Xi Jinping is well aware that he can't afford a real conflict with Taiwan. Taiwan's few hundred Shufeng and Skybow missiles are more than enough to give the PLA a hard time. Moreover, if a conflict were to erupt, the US military would be right there to assist in targeting. Xi can only try to create internal chaos in Taiwan through military pressure, hoping that the Taiwanese people would turn away from parties and leaders challenging Beijing. But the effect has been quite the opposite. Every time China escalates its military intimidation, the Democratic Progressive Party, or DPP's, support surges, while the China-friendly Kuomintang becomes increasingly unpopular. This time, President Lai's approval rating shot up to 53%. Clearly, Xi Jinping doesn't understand Taiwan or its people at all. On the Taiwanese side, after President Lai took office, he conducted a major overhaul in the police, prosecution, and judicial sectors, placing all key positions under the control of trusted individuals. This move ensured the stability of the government and its ability to resist infiltration, making it difficult for CCP agents and spies in Taiwan to take any significant action. This recent military exercise has sparked anger among the public towards the Kuomintang and the Taiwan People's Party. These two parties are pushing a congressional reform bill in the legislative yuan that would essentially bury freedom and democracy. If enacted, the legislative yuan would have the power to summon the premier to stand in as punishment and even sanction the judicial yuan. The recently passed hearing and investigation rights allowed the legislative yuan to arbitrarily summon individuals for questioning. Even organized crime groups won't support the KMT anymore because this hearing and investigation power could be used against them as well. The people-elected legislators are now trying to legislate to control the people, which is unacceptable to the Taiwanese public. Outside the legislative yuan, protest sites are packed with crowds, and the atmosphere is fervent. High school and college students stand on small stages to speak out. One student made a compelling point. Taiwan is a diverse place, allowing for various voices, races, and languages. If the Kuomintang continues this way, Taiwan will become a place with only one voice and one ideology, no different from the CCP. Everyone sees through it. The Kuomintang is essentially the CCP's puppet, and the PLA's military exercise was meant to support the Kuomintang. Otherwise, why would the Kuomintang be in such a rush to pass these bills? The bills were presented just hours before the vote. Even the Kuomintang legislators were unaware of the content, and the public had no clue what the laws were about, forcing a quick decision. The Kuomintang and the Taiwan People's Party have really messed up this time. Even if their plan passes, there are still administrative reviews and legislative recalls. It's likely that the Kuomintang and People's Party legislators who vote in favor will be recalled by the voters. After the recall, new legislators can overturn the congressional reform bill. This series of actions means the bill has little chance of succeeding. If the Kuomintang and People's Party continue this way, they will likely face complete defeat in the 2026 local elections. The CCP misunderstands how Taiwan's democratic politics work, underestimating the political awareness and judgment of the Taiwanese people. They mistakenly believe that by supporting pro-China parties and politicians, they can gradually infiltrate and influence Taiwan's political arena, ultimately achieving peaceful unification. But this idea has proven to be overly naive and simplistic. From former Kuomintang chairwoman Hung Shu-chu and former President Ma Ying-jeou to current figures like President of the Legislative Yuan Han Kuo-yu and Chairman of People's Party Ko Wen-je, each potential collaborator has been closely monitored and guarded against by the Chinese public and political circles. The difficulty of internal infiltration and subversion is increasing day by day. In this context, a mouthpiece of the CCP, Hu Shijin, has expressed a sense of helplessness and pessimism on Weibo. He admitted that he hopes to see the ultimate unification of the motherland in his lifetime. It implies that the prospects for peaceful unification or a military takeover of Taiwan are both bleak, and whether he will witness unification in his lifetime is uncertain. This shows that the CCP has little hope for achieving unification through internal disruption in Taiwan, but they have not completely given up on trying to infiltrate and influence Taiwan through various means. In Taiwan, pro-CCP forces remain active, frequently promoting their stances through live broadcasts and speeches. They appear indifferent to the protest and recall efforts by Taiwanese citizens, as they still have a few strategy left to play. The CCP is planning to besiege Taiping Island and Dongsha Island in the South China Sea, as well as Kinmen and Matsu near Fujian, cutting off residents from essential supplies and strategic resources. Simultaneously, through psychological warfare and propaganda, they aim to install fear and despair in the island's residents, pushing local officials to consider handover of defense responsibilities. The current country and city leaders in Kinmen and Matsu are members of the Kuomintang, providing potential internal cooperation for the CCP's strategy. If the island residents waver due to the siege, these local officials might take the opportunity to announce return to the motherland, claiming to rescue the people from their plight. If this strategy succeeds in Kinmen and Matsu, the Kuomintang and People's Party could use it as an excuse to argue that the current government is incapable of safeguarding Taiwan's security and welfare, and they may pose a vote of no confidence and recall a motion against the current government. This is one possible path. Apart from the military siege and psychological pressure on the islands around Taiwan, the most destructive method the CCP might take is to disrupt Taiwan's existing financial order and market stability. Currently, many Taiwanese companies operating in mainland China are struggling, but their parent companies in Taiwan are reporting impressive financial results. These companies might have come under the influence of the CCP. By releasing false positive financial reports, they aim to create an illusion of prosperity in the Taiwanese stock market. Taking advantage of the artificially high stock prices, they could then sell off their shares to cash out. There's also a significant amount of capital in the Taiwanese market with Chinese backgrounds. If they decide to short the Taiwanese market, they might deliberately release loss reports or negative news, causing stock prices to plummet and triggering panic selling. This could create a vicious cycle where the decline of the stock market spreads to futures, foreign exchange, real estate, and other financial markets, impacting the entire financial system in Taiwan. Volatility in the real estate market will directly affect bank loans, collateral valuations, consumer confidence, threatening the stability of the entire economic system. Investors might suffer substantial losses, and market confidence could be severely shaken. Ordinary people would face increased living pressures, shrinking wealth, and declining living standards, potentially leading to social unrest and instability. In such a scenario, many investors and the general public, who are usually indifferent to politics, might turn their frustrations towards the current government. The Kuomintang and the People's Party could seize this opportunity to launch a media offensive, criticizing President Lai's government for its ineffectiveness, thereby creating a basis for recall actions. A similar situation occurred in 2000 when Chen Shui-bian was elected as president. The subsequent sharp decline in the Taiwanese stock market was seen as a crackdown on the newly elected Democratic Progressive Party administration. The CCP's strategy to strike Taiwan through financial means is not just an economic attack, but a comprehensive political and psychological warfare. The cooperation of the Kuomintang and the People's Party makes this strategy more likely to be implemented and more destructive. It depends on whether the Lai administration can ensure market transparency, prevent external interference and internal collusion, and strengthen financial oversight of Taiwanese companies investing in mainland China. It also depends on whether they can timely and transparently inform the public about the economic and financial situation, explain the causes of financial fluctuations, and outline the government's response strategies to boost public confidence. In fact, the US and its allies can also offer cooperation and support in maintaining financial market stability. Maintaining financial stability is just one of the many challenges Taiwan faces. The primary objective of the CCP's military exercises is to constrain the US defense deployment, especially to create opportunities for Chinese and Russian submarines to break through the First Island Chain blockade. It is well known that the First Island Chain's true blockade is not by those conspicuous surface ships, but by the elusive submarines, particularly those whose acoustic signatures are not yet known to the US. These are the true strategic assets of China and Russia. On the 25th, the Chinese ambassador to Japan openly stated that a Taiwan contingency is a contingency for Japan. He refers to it as a point of no return, essentially threatening Japan not to support Taiwan or risk dragging itself into a conflict. This shows that the CCP's arrogance remains unabated. Meanwhile, Russia is also looking for excuses to pressure Japan. On the 24th, Russia claimed that if Japan acquires armed capabilities, it will retaliate. North Korea is also aligning with the actions of China and Russia. The North Korean Ministry of Defense said that US-South Korean drone spying and South Korean leaflets spreading anti-North Korean messages are big annoyances, causing North Korea to react aggressively. North Korea has accused US and South Korean ships of frequently violating its maritime boundaries under the pretext of patrols and warned that continued actions could lead to serious consequences. Last November, North Korea launched its first spy satellite and is now preparing to launch a new military satellite. These actions were intended to contribute to the regional tension orchestrated by CCP and Russia. North Korea's role is to cause trouble without escalating the situation too much, creating a significant display of force. Russia employs a similar strategy, deliberately creating tension through non-strategic nuclear exercises to tie down the US military deployments. North Korea might launch ballistic missiles, further escalating the situation. Many actions by China, Russia, and North Korea, whether in propaganda or actual maneuvers, often contain elements of deception. Their true aim is to force US aircraft carriers to move back and forth. If anti-submarine surveillance slackens, even slightly, Chinese and Russian submarines, whose acoustic signature are not yet known to the US, might slip past the first island chain into the vast Pacific Ocean, where they would be much harder to locate. But the US military has not been deceived and is proceeding methodically according to its established plans. The USS Ronald Reagan aircraft carrier is conducting joint exercises with the Dutch Navy in the South China Sea, simulating attacks on artificial islands. Meanwhile, Pentagon military experts are closely observing the sudden military exercises by the PLA, gaining deeper insights into the PLA's preparedness regarding the Taiwan Strait issue. The CCP is not in a hurry. It will continue to conduct exercises like 2024B and 2024C. They think if they can achieve their goals, great. If not, it doesn't matter. The real purpose of these military exercises is to maneuver the US defense lines, creating opportunities for Chinese and Russian submarines. The threat of Russian nuclear submarines should not be underestimated, as they are equipped with nuclear torpedoes. Imagine a scenario where nuclear submarines approach the US defense system and a nuclear missile could reach US soil in 10 minutes. At that moment, the US president receives a call, "We only need 10 minutes to hit you." The US might have no choice but to sit down and negotiate. The CCP and Russia's demands are straightforward. In our territories, we call the shots. Russia has occupied parts of Ukraine, establishing new borders and drawing a new Iron Curtain. This situation is almost like the Cuban Missile Crisis, where Soviet nuclear submarines crossed the US defense line into the Atlantic, leading to a lowering of the Iron Curtain. Subsequently, the US would ostensibly refrain from interfering with the Soviet Union's actions in Eastern Europe. When the Soviet Union brutally suppressed freedom movements in Budapest and Prague in the 50s, the US seemingly stayed out of it, only engaging in minor covert actions. Forcing the US to comply through such means might not be easy. The US is not naive. They have learned from history. According to insiders, the US and UK must fully monitor CCP and Russian submarines because missing even one could result in disaster. In the face of such threats, the CCP is still preparing for a potential Taiwan Strait war. This is because Russia is exerting pressure behind the scenes, forcing Xi Jinping to prepare in advance. Currently, Xi can avoid deploying troops in the Taiwan Strait by providing financial support to Russia. But if China's economy continues to deteriorate and can no longer fund Russia, Putin may demand that Xi at least make a military gesture. Xi is now preparing to handle the worst-case scenario that might arise. After the announcement of the military exercises around Taiwan, the Central Theater Command in Beijing began sounding the charge in the middle of the night on the 23rd and 24th, with troops starting their training at this time. The primary duty of this unit is to defend Beijing if a war breaks out in the Taiwan Strait, as the missiles from Taiwan and the US would first target Beijing. Since Lai Ching-te won the election in January, military bases around Beijing have started distributing emergency kits to every household in the surrounding areas to prepare for wartime. Clearly, these military bases would become priority targets in the event of conflict. Recently, heavy rains in Hebei have led to comments within the military, such as flooding Zhongnanhai and beating Xi Jinping, indicating that Xi's control over the military is being challenged. The CCP regime is now facing internal and external troubles. Externally, they fear US missile strikes, and internally, they worry about public resistance. Recently, there have been a noticeable increase in ID checks on the streets of Beijing and stricter control over outsiders entering the city. Since last year, Xi Jinping has conducted a massive purge within the military. At least a dozen high-ranking officials from the Rocket Force Equipment Department, the Central Military Commission Joint Staff Department, the Strategic Support Force, and aerospace and military enterprises have been investigated, including 2 former commanders of the Rocket Force and a former defense minister. In March of this year, Xi also removed more than 20 military representatives from the National People's Congress. Unlike his predecessors, Xi Jinping has gradually dismantled the systems that restrain the power of the top leader since coming to power. Many dissatisfied party members, although not yet daring to speak out publicly, are quietly gathering forces against Xi. It is rumored that even retired generals like Liu Yuan, the son of Liu Shaoqi, a prominent figure of the second generation of revolutionaries, have become discontented with Xi Jinping. These generals are currently biding their time but are secretly in contact with each other. If the economic situation worsens, making it difficult to pay military salaries, or if factional struggles within the military intensify, this anti-Xi force might unite. Should the US choose to engage militarily with China at the moment, the CCP's stability maintenance forces would likely become paralyzed and the military could seize the opportunity to rebel. Currently, there are 4 major factions within the CCP military: the Fujian faction, Shaanxi faction, the Henan faction, and the Shandong faction, all vying for control. The Fujian faction, led by General He Weidong, is particularly gaining strength. Xi Jinping will not allow any faction to become too powerful, as it would threaten his authority. Although He Weidong, a member of the Fujian faction and a close ally promoted by Xi, has been rising, his predecessor, Zhong Shaojun, was also reassigned to the National Defense University as political commissar. He Weidong will likely be reassigned eventually as well. If the CCP were to take military action against Taiwan someday, there could be internal upheaval within the PLA. Attacking Taiwan would inevitably involve dealing with US forces stationed in Japan first. Should they engage US forces, countries allied with the US, like Japan, would certainly join the conflict. At that point, the S-400 air defense systems purchased from Putin might be useless. The conflict in Crimea has shown that the S-400 is nearly ineffective at intercepting US Army tactical missiles. If the US military attacks Beijing, it might be a direct hit with devastating consequences.